Likutei Sichos, Chelik Chavav, Volume 26, the Sicha for Parshat Tzaveh / Zayin Adar. This Sicha will explain the connection between the Parshat Tzaveh and the 7th of Adar, the anniversary of passing of Moshe Rabbeinu. And it will do it also by means of an amazing gematria. As an introduction, just to get familiar with this idea, Parshat Tzaveh, this parsha of this week, is the only parsha in the Torah since the birth of Moshe was mentioned in Parsha Shmos that his name does not appear even once. In general, the background for this is, as it's explained, that when the Bnei Yisrael, when the Jews sinned with the golden calf, and Moshe pleaded with Hashem, in fact demanded that he do not annihilate them, that he do not destroy them, and Moshe said to them, either you forgive them, and if not, erase me from the book that you wrote. The Gemara says, the Talmud tells us, that when a tzaddik, when a righteous person, a pious person, gives a curse, even if it's stipulated on a condition, as it was in this case, but yet it has some effect, and that is the reason that's given for why Parshas Tzaveh does not have his name. But, of course, like everything else, there's always more to it, as we'll see in the Sicha. Another thing to be familiar with, the idea, the concept of a name. The name of a person, the name of a thing. The name of a person, although it's connected to the person, but it's not innately connected to the person's essence. I'm sorry, it doesn't bring out, it isn't the person's essence. Proof for it, a common proof for it, that it's somewhat superficial, and that it's only there as a means of identification. So someone else outside of yourself could use this as a means of getting your attention, of identifying you, because the fact is that every single name that exists today has been around for thousands of years, and hundreds of thousands of people have the same name, so it's not unique to the person, it's not exclusive to the person that carries that name. Another thing to be familiar with is the Pardes. Literally means an orchard, but it's an acronym for the 4 different ways, the 4 different styles, generally speaking, in which the Torah can be learned. Pshat, Remez, Drush, Soid. Pshat is the basic meaning. Remez is like basically things that are hinted, that are somewhat hidden in a code manner, so to speak, in the Torah. Then there is the Drush, the homiletics, and then of course there's Soid, the secret. In this Sikha we will focus in on the Remez aspect. And Remez, things that are hinted in the Torah, many times can become expressed by means of gematria, which gematria uses basically the numerical value of words, of ideas, to express a correlation between one thing and another and give us a deeper sense, a deeper meaning of things. However, it's very, very important, as the Rebbe will stress in the Sicha, to know that a gematria is not just some random, arbitrary thing that one can just superficially do with it as they wish. In other words, it's not up for grabs that one can just manipulate it and find a number here and a numerical value there and somehow pin them together. Rather, what a gematria really is and what it does is when there is an inherent connection in the idea, in the theme of 2 things, the gematria, the numerical value of it, which match up, serve as an extra measure to tell us that indeed there is an esoteric connection, that there is an inherent bond between these 2 otherwise seemingly different ideas or different concepts. So in short, a gematria cannot just be used arbitrarily. It cannot just be made up. It has to have, obviously, a source and a validity by virtue of the ideas inherently having a connection. Another thing to be familiar with, the 5 levels of the soul. Although we all have one soul, but there are 5 aspects to it. And these 5 levels of the soul, for the most part, are not really prevalent, so to speak, down here, but they exist within each and every soul. And then finally, to be familiar with the term Seder Hishtalshelus, literally translated, the order of evolvement, which is basically the whole world as we see it, as it functions in a very, very fantastic system, meaning coming all the way from the spiritual emanations that come from on high, and as they evolve through the various levels, to the various structures, as it comes down and manifests itself into this world. So this whole system is called Seder Ishtalshelus. Let's go into the Sicha. So the 7th Adar, which is the anniversary of passing of Moshe Rabbeinu, most years coincides, it falls out in the week of Parshat Tzaveh. And as it's written in the holy books, that there's actually a remez, there's a hint for it in the actual Parsha. By virtue of the fact that the Parsha, as we said in the introduction, is the Parsha that from when Moshe was mentioned in the Torah the first time, does not have his name mentioned, not even once, in the entire Parsha of Tzaveh. However, the Rebbe says we need to take a closer look at this, because things don't seem to be so symmetrically perfect, at least on the surface. Why? Because if you think about it, in Parshas Tzaveh, it just doesn't mention his name explicitly. But indeed, it actually does address Moshe, and in fact, very, very directly. Perhaps even more than mentioning a name. Because typically when you mention a name, you're talking about the person. This Parsha speaks in a very present and direct manner to the person. The very first word in the Parsha, Ve'ata, and you. It's speaking directly to Moshe. So how do we say that Moshe is not mentioned in the Parsha? In other words, how does it serve as a connection to the idea of his passing? Another thing, it would seem that the absence of mentioning a tzaddik's name in a direct manner would seem to be in contrast to the idea of the passing of a tzaddik. Because we know that when a tzaddik passes away, it's not that the name becomes erased. It's not that they go away, they become void. On the contrary, we know that all their actions and all their accomplishments, all their good deeds throughout their entire life becomes memorialized and becomes eternalized. So what is this idea of not mentioning his name, and how does that connect to his passing? And like I said before, if you look at the Parsha continuously says, you shall command, you shall do, you shall take. So it's speaking to Moshe himself directly. So how do we say that it makes no mention of Moshe? The answer is as follows. It's written in the Zohar, in the holy book of the Zohar, that a tzaddik, quote, a tzaddik that passes away, ishtakach bekula almin yatire b'chayei, that he's now found, he's now present in all the worlds, even more than when he was alive. What does that mean? Not only that, of course, which is logical and obvious, that he is now present in the upper worlds, in the higher echelons of spirituality, but rather that in all worlds means that now also in this world, he is in this physical world, he is more present in a disproportionate manner than he was when he was alive. What is the meaning behind this? How does this make sense? Well, the Alter Rebbe explains that when a tzaddik was alive, as holy as he is, as spiritual as it is, as lofty as he is, but he is still contained to a body. And therefore, since he has soul in body, the body serves as a limitation. But now that he's freed from the body, so by definition, he is actually more present than he was while he was alive. Another thing the Alter Rebbe explains, that when a tzaddik passes away, he ascends, his spirit and his soul ascends to its mekor chotzvah, to its very, very place, highest point, the root of the soul, to its higher, so to speak, source of the soul, meaning that it now connects to the highest point of itself, and this level that it's now on is, as the Zohar says, is present and found in the entire world. So what comes out when a tzaddik passes away, to summarize? Two extremes. In the one hand, the tzaddik becomes extremely elevated in a manner and a point that he never experienced throughout his life, because like we said, he was limited. So it's a disproportionate elevation and ascent than when he was alive. But on the other hand, that great elevation is now present here in this world even more than when the tzaddik was alive as a result. And according to this, we will have an appreciation and understand why Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in the Parsha. You see, as we said in the introduction, a name is really just, it's not the essence of the person itself. The name just serves as a means of identification for the name, a means of communication for the person, but it's not the person themselves. And you see this actually in a very, very realistic manner in the birth of every child, especially in Jewish tradition. A child is born, and it takes some time, and for a baby boy it takes 8 days, until that child receives a name. But that child exists, the child's alive, the child's functioning. So that tells you that the essence of the life, the essence of the person, is not contingent on a name. Moreover, Moshe Rabbeinu himself, the name Moshe, he did not receive at birth. In fact, he didn't even receive it from his parent. He received it several months later, over 3 months later, after he was saved by the daughter of Parai. So this tells us that the name does not bring out the essence of the person. But when you speak to a person directly, and you say you, now you've connected with the essence of the person. And this is what the Parshas the Tzaveh, is hinting to. When Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, he ascended, his essence ascended to such a high point, and then a higher point than even what a name could contain, what a name could express. But Moshe himself did not go away. He ascended, but as we said, now that he's more present in the world, because he has no restrictions, no limitations, so that great high point where he connected to his own essence now is revealed in this world. Now, since Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in the Parsha, so it's understood, it's obvious, that the whole Parsha is connected to the essence of Moshe. The whole Parsha connects to the essence of Moshe. And that's why it doesn't mention his name. Now, every Parsha, the theme, the idea of the Parsha is always expressed in the name of the Parsha, in the title of the Parsha. This Parsha is called Tzaveh. And therefore we must draw the conclusion that the name Tzaveh, the word Tzaveh, which is the accepted name according to Jewish custom, has and brings out this idea, this essence, this idea that it's the essence of Moshe that's being expressed in this parsha, and that is what connects to the day of his passing, because he reaches his essence and now it spreads into the whole world. So the Rebbe says it's like this. If you take the word Tzaveh and you make the calculation of its numerical value, it equals up 501, meaning 1 over 500. Now, what does it say? What is the significance of this? Let me just remind you, Gematria is not just an arbitrary thing, as we said in the introduction, but focusing back on this, what is the significance of 501, of this number? So we look in the Gemara, the Chazal tell us, our sages tell us, they make a very interesting statement. Quote, Hashem, Holach HaKadosh Baruch Hu Malach, Tov Kuf Shana. Hashem, so to speak, went a distance of 500 years in order, Liknois Leishem, to acquire a name for himself. Obviously, it doesn't mean he was looking for some fame, but the meaning of it is as follows. It's explained that the entire existence of the world, the idea of the world, as we know it, the natural world, it all equals up and gets expressed in the idea of 500. Because you see over here, it says it's a distance of 500. What does it mean he went to acquire a name? He took, so to speak, and made this whole process of the 500, which is the world that we have, in order to acquire his name, in order to reveal his name, in order to make his name known. And that's why Hashem, so to speak, endeavored and to make the world which is expressed in the idea of 500. This is very big. It's amazing. However, as we mentioned above, it's still limited, because a name inherently, innately indicates that it's somewhat of a lower level. It's somewhat not of the essence of the thing, in this case of Hashem himself. 501, however, which tells us 1 over the 500, now this is pointing to, this indicates the essence, That level which is higher and beyond a name, which goes even higher than Seder Hishtalshelus, than the order of the involvement of all the emanations. And in fact, we find a parallel for this also in the soul of a person. Remember, we said that every person's soul is divided into 5 levels. And each one of these levels, as the Alter Rebbe explains, the ultimate number, the ultimate completeness of each level is when it's 100. Because as we know, as everything breaks down into 10, and each one of these 10 breaks down into 10, so it's 10 times 10, so together it's 100. So if it's 5 levels, and the ultimate point of each of the levels is when it's a complete 100, so you have a total of 500. Now, what is the indication of 501 in the soul of a person? That it's the soul, the essence of the soul, even that which is beyond any description, even albeit the highest ones, even the highest description of Yechida, is still a description, it's still a name, it's still a level. In fact, the Rebbe points out that when it says, Chamesh Shemois Nikru La, 5 names are given to her, to it, meaning to the soul, that tells you that there is a soul, there is the it, there is the soul itself, and then there's the 5 names, the 5 levels of the soul. So back to the point, 501 is an indicator which tells us that it's expressing the essence of the soul, the one which is beyond the 500. Now, something even more beautiful. The gematria, the tally of the amount of psukim, the amount of verses in this parsha, which also brings out the same point. The amount of verses in this parsha, you can see at the end of the parsha, usually there's a tally, is 101. Now the Alter Rebbe explains that the difference between 100 and 101 is that 100 is a complete number. It's a complete round number. As we said before, 10 times 10, 100 is a perfect number. 101, this represents, quote, the chad veloy bechushbon. As it says in the Zohar, that one who is beyond any count, Hashem himself, the essence of it all. And this expresses the same idea, the same concept as the 501. Again, this all comes together, that this parsha is about expressing the essence, which is beyond any revelation, because it's the essence itself. It can't be revealed through a name. It's beyond the name, but it gets revealed. And that is the whole bottom line of this thing. So in short and summary, yes, there is that which is beyond a name, the essence of everything. And this parsha, because it's connected to the passing of Moshe, which, as we said, the passing of a tzaddik means he reaches the highest point, his own essence, to the highest level, but the idea of it that it comes down and it gets revealed. Something that cannot happen during his lifetime.